Welcome back to another Humm Baby Baseball Countdown, and today we're not talking Hall of Fame snubs, but the exact opposite, potential anti-snubs. These are players who were voted in, but may or may not have made it onto my ballot if I had one. This video is not meant to put down any of the players on this list, and obviously any player who makes it into the Hall of Fame had a great MLB career and accomplished more on a baseball field than most people can ever dream of, including myself. However, there are several players in the Hall of Fame whose presence there is a bit perplexing, especially when players like Andruw Jones, Keith Hernandez, and even old-time players like Sherry McGee, who I'll be talking about more today, can't get any traction. So today we'll be examining 10 Hall of Fame MLB players whose induction has been controversial and whose names have appeared on several worst Hall of Famers lists, and I'll give my final opinion on whether they deserved their plaque or whether they are anti-snubs, players who didn't quite have a career deserving of Hall of Fame enshrinement, in my opinion. Keep in mind, by no means am I proposing actually removing anyone from the Hall of Fame. Once you're in for life, although I wouldn't be surprised if someday a huge scandal causes the Hall of Fame to actually remove a plaque. So let's get to this list of 10 players oftentimes considered unworthy of Hall of Fame enshrinement, and I'll let you know my opinion on whether they deserved to get in or not. I'll start with the older players and move towards the modern ones, so make sure to stick around because at number 1 is a player who was elected as recently as 2019. Number 10, Tommy McCarthy, outfielder 1884 to 1896. Up first is a player from the very early days of professional baseball, and he played from 1884 to 1896 for Boston, Philadelphia, St. Louis, and Brooklyn. McCarthy began his career as a pitcher, but was ineffective and eventually switched to the outfield. He only had more than 100 at-bats in 9 separate seasons, but was a prolific base stealer, leading the league with 83 steals in 1890. He's also credited with having invented the hit and run. However, he was an average hitter for his time and never led the league in any offensive categories except at-bats and plate appearances. His career WAR of 14.6 is about the same as Gleyber Torres, who just finished his 6th MLB season. It is by far the lowest WAR for any position player in the Hall of Fame. His career numbers were small even compared to his peers. Buck Ewing, who played from 1880 to 1897, had a career WAR of 47.9. It's okay that McCarthy's in the Hall of Fame as an early pioneer of the game, but unfortunately, I'd have to say his overall numbers, which include just 1,493 hits, 44 home runs, and a 740 OPS, just aren't enough to merit a plaque. Final determination, anti-snub. Number 9, Ray Schalk, catcher, 1912 to 1929. Up next is catcher Ray Schalk, who was known as one of the innocent members of the 1919 Chicago White Sox team that lost the World Series to the Reds after 8 of the Chicago players conspired to throw the series. He was known as a great defender with a powerful arm who worked well with pitchers. He led the league in fielding percentage 8 times, and in 1925 threw out a league-leading 72% of would-be base stealers. For his career, he is 10th all-time, throwing out 51.59% of runners. As a hitter, however, he left much to be desired, with a low .253 career average, although a good eye at the plate led to a .340 on-base percentage. He hit just 11 home runs, putting him in last place among Hall of Fame position players. He had 1,345 career hits, even less than McCarthy. He did a good job of limiting strikeouts and working walks, but was otherwise zero threat at the plate. Sherry McGee played around the same time as Schalk, but had 824 more hits, led the league in multiple offensive categories several times, including 123 RBIs in 1910, and was also known for playing stellar defense. McGee had a 59.4 career WAR compared to Schalk's 33.1, which is lower than Charlie Leibrandt, Ray Durham, and Mark Ellis. I'd have to say, despite the solid defense and amazing ability to throw out base runners, Schalk did not quite put together a Hall of Fame career. Final determination, anti-snub.
What's this, Williams? What's this?
Number 8, Hack Wilson, outfield 1923 to 1934. Powerful outfielder Hack Wilson shows up on many of the worst Hall of Famers lists due to the simple fact that he had a very short peak, and by the time he was 32, problems with alcohol basically ended his career. He was also known as a terrible defensive outfielder, and if he played today, would certainly be a full-time DH. However, he had a 5-year stretch in which the only hitter possibly more feared in the game would have been Babe Ruth, and there were times when many pitchers might have preferred to face Ruth. From 1926 to 1930, despite being only 5'6", he led the league in home runs 4 times with the Cubs and had a season for the ages in 1930 when he crushed 56 home runs and drove in an astonishing and record-breaking 191 runs, a single-season record that stands to this day. He also hit .356 that season with a 1,177 OPS. The problem is he had just 9 seasons in which he played at least 100 games, and after the 1930 season his drinking habits only worsened, and he showed up to spring training overweight. He never had a monster season again, although he managed 23 bombs in 1932 with Brooklyn. Overall, Wilson hit 244 home runs and had a career .307 average with a .940 OPS. His career WAR of 38.7 isn't great, but when you're able to rival the great Babe Ruth for 5 seasons, set a single season RBI record that has never even been threatened, much less broken, and still hit over 300 throughout a 12-year career, I feel like it's just enough. And I'm going to say that Hack Wilson deserves his plaque in Cooperstown. Final determination, deserving. Number 7, Lloyd Wainer, 1927 to 1945. A player like Lloyd Wainer, aka Little Poison, probably wouldn't make it in today. He was nowhere near as good as his brother Paul Wainer, who hit .333 with 113 home runs and an .878 OPS over a 20-year career. Paul Wainer also won an MVP and made 4 All-Star teams. Lloyd, on the other hand, hit just 27 home runs in his career, never won an MVP, had a career OPS under 800, and made just 1 All-Star team, although the All-Star game didn't exist throughout his first 7 seasons, which contain his best years. But he still hit .316 throughout his career and retired with 2,459 hits at a time when only 7 players had ever hit over 3,000. He looked like a sure thing at the start of his career in 1927 when he hit .355 and led the league in runs. He would have probably won the Rookie of the Year if it existed back then. 1929, he led the league with 20 triples, and in 30, he hit .362. In his 5th season, 1931, he led the league with 214 hits. Unfortunately, his career slowed down after that, and he struggled with injuries and alcoholism. He only played in more than 140 games one more time, 1938. Still, he hit over 300 10 separate times. And had the All-Star game existed since his rookie year, he likely would have made 6 All-Star teams. He finished in the top 10 for MVP twice and in the top 15 4 times. With over 2,400 hits, although his career WAR is a bit low, I believe he did just enough that if I had room on my ballot, I would have definitely considered putting Lloyd Wainer on there, and he gets a special bonus for carrying around his 16mm camera, capturing lots of footage during a time where footage is extremely rare. I'm not saying that's why I'm going to do this, but it doesn't hurt. Lloyd Wainer, I'm going to say barely, but deserving. Number 6, Rick Farrell, 1929 to 1947. Catcher Rick Farrell played 18 years in the league and made an impressive 8 All-Star teams. He was considered one of the best catchers in the league in the 30s and early 40s. Farrell never played another position, and his 1,806 games at catcher set an American League longevity record that stood for 40 years. Unfortunately, longevity was one of his best assets because his actual stats don't exactly jump off the page. He had a strong arm and threw out 44% of would-be base stealers, but also led the league in passed balls 5 times, although that could be attributed to the fact that for years multiple members of his rotation were knuckleballers. Offensively, he not only never led the league in a single category, but never even finished in the top 10 in any category. He hit just 28 career home runs and had a .281 career average, which was fairly low for the time and extremely low for a Hall of Famer. The fact is, Farrell wasn't considered a Hall of Famer and was not elected until 1984 by the Veterans Committee. The story goes that the committee was called and asked to throw a couple votes Farrell's way so he wouldn't get completely shut out. Farrell was 78 years old at the time and evidently multiple voters decided to throw him that vote, and it turned out that he got 9 total votes, enough to put him in the Hall of Fame. I'm happy for Farrell for sure, and I'm sure that it was a thrilling moment, but unfortunately I just don't see a Hall of Fame career when I look at the numbers. Final determination, anti-snub. Number 5, Bill Mazeroski, second base, 1956 to 1972. Throughout my lifetime, a controversial Hall of Fame selection has always been the great Bill Mazeroski, remembered for years as being the only player to end a World Series with a home run. That is until Joe Carter joined the club in 1993. Without that one swing of the bat, Mazeroski might not have gotten in. However, he was definitely a star in the game for years. He made 10 All-Star teams and won a total of 8 Gold Gloves. Much like Hall of Famer Ozzie Smith, defense was his specialty, and he led the league numerous times in defensive categories throughout his career. Offensively, though, Mazeroski hit just .260 for his career with an extremely low .667 OPS. But these numbers do line up with Ozzie Smith, as the Wizard hit just .262 with a .666 OPS. But Smith walked more and ended his career with 444 more hits, while winning 5 more Gold Gloves than Maz. Mazeroski's .299 on-base percentage is lower than any Hall of Famer. It's hard to justify putting a position player in the Hall of Fame with an on-base percentage under 300. He also lacked speed and stole just 27 bases in his career, while Ozzie stole 580. When you put it all together, it seems that the defense doesn't quite make up for the offense in Mazeroski's case. On the Jaws list for second baseman, which ranks players based on their Hall of Fame worthiness, he ends up right around Giants longtime second baseman Robbie Thompson and the 80s Astros second baseman Bill Doran. Neither have even been included in a Hall of Fame conversation. And to make matters worse, a defensive wizard like Andruw Jones won 10 Gold Gloves and crushed 434 home runs, but cannot get elected. So ultimately, I don't think one amazing walk-off home run is enough to put Mazeroski over the top. Sadly, I would not have voted for him. Final determination, anti-snub. Number 4, Lou Brock, outfield, 1961 to 1979. Believe it or not, I see Lou Brock's name over and over on MLB Worst Hall of Famers lists. Brock was of course known for his blazing speed and held the MLB record for career stolen bases until Rickey Henderson passed him. He led the league in steals 8 times, including 1974 when he nabbed 118 bases. But he could also hit and collected at least 200 hits 4 separate times. He finished his career with 3,023 hits, which normally makes you a shoo-in Hall of Famer. He never won an MVP but did finish second in 1974. Criticisms against Brock include a poor career OPS of 753, a low WAR of 45.3, which is the same as Tony Fernandez, and his defensive metrics aren't great. However, sometimes, in my opinion, you have to look past the advanced stats and identify a true Hall of Famer based on the excitement and energy he brought to the game. Lou Brock did something better than anyone else for most of his career, and that was stealing bases, but he also managed over 3,000 hits while he did it. But if there's something that definitely puts him over the top for me, it's a .391 career postseason average in 21 games. He helped the Cardinals win 2 World Series with clutch hitting and incredible speed. In the '67 World Series, Brock hit .414 with 7 steals and a home run. When you put it all together, there's no doubt in my mind, Lou Brock belongs in the Hall of Fame. Final determination, deserving. Number 3, Bruce Sutter, right-handed pitcher, 1976 to 1988. Relief pitchers are always an interesting topic when it comes to the Hall of Fame. Due to the nature of their job, they almost always have a relatively low WAR, and with Sutter, it's no exception at 24.1. But Sutter was not only a reliever, he also had a shorter career, playing just 12 total seasons. With just that information, it seems almost impossible to put together a Hall of Fame career. However, Sutter was absolutely dominant for a period of time while implementing his deadly split-fingered fastball. From 1979 to 1984, he led the league in saves 5 times and even won a Cy Young Award in '79. Sutter was a 6-time All-Star and also threw 4.1 scoreless innings in the '82 NLCS and picked up 2 saves in the World Series to help the Cardinals win it all. But was that enough? After his last dominant season in 1984, he pitched in just 3 more seasons in which he was just serviceable. He did reach 300 saves, but so did Jason Isringhausen, Doug Jones, and even Houston Street, among many others. Sutter gets credit for being one of the early pioneers of the splitter, but otherwise, a I'm not sure he has enough longevity as a relief pitcher to get my vote. On the Jaws list for relievers, he comes in 24th, below even free agent pitcher David Robertson. To me, being a reliever, a 5-year period of dominance isn't quite enough, even with the Cy Young, unless you surround it with a long and solid career that builds up to at least 400 saves. Suter barely hit 300, and although he was fantastic at his peak, I wouldn't have been able to put him on my ballot. Final determination, anti-snub. Number 2, Jack Morris, right-handed pitcher, 1977 to 1994. From 2000 to 2014, Jack Morris was on the Hall of Fame ballot but failed to receive the 75% of votes required for election. In fact, he never even topped 30, although that doesn't mean too much as the standard voters routinely fail to vote for players with obvious Hall of Fame careers. But is Jack Morris one of those players? His career stats are impressive, but are they Hall of Fame worthy? He went 254 and 186 with a 3.9 ERA, which is the highest ERA of any Hall of Famer. But some pitcher has to have the highest. He never won a Cy Young, but finished in the top 10 an incredible 7 times. He won at least 20 games 3 times and was consistently solid, if not excellent, throughout his 18-year career. Based on his regular season stats, I'd say he's borderline, but it's close. However, in the postseason, especially the World Series, he was masterful. In 1984, he won both his Fall Classic starts for the Tigers, both complete game victories. Then, in 1991 for the Twins, he put forth a legendary performance, starting 3 of the 7 games, allowing just 3 runs in 23 innings. In Game 7, he was brilliant in an all-time epic game, facing John Smoltz. Morris threw 10 shutout innings and led the Twins to a ring, taking home the World Series MVP. There's no way the Twins would have won that World Series without Morris. Maybe I'm a bit biased because I watched that 91 World Series on TV, but when adding some of the best all-time clutch World Series performances with a career that included 7 top 10 Cy Young seasons, 254 wins, and over 2,400 strikeouts, I do believe Jack Morris is deserving, and I'm going to say that his World Series performances in 84 and 91 take him over the top, and he deserves that plaque in the Hall of Fame. Final determination, deserving. Number 1, Harold Baines, DH, 1980 to 2001. One of the most interesting Hall of Fame cases in recent years has to be the surprising, even shocking election of one Harold Baines. Baseball fans of the 80s all know about Harold Baines. He was a first overall selection in 1977 and went on to become a staple in the White Sox lineup for years. He could be consistently counted on to hit at least 20 home runs and drive in 90-plus runs per season. He wasn't great defensively and eventually became a full-time DH, but stayed productive for years, eventually moving on to play for a variety of teams, including the Rangers, A's, and Orioles, returning to Chicago from time to time, including to finish off his career in 2000 and 2001. Baines played 22 years in the big leagues and made 6 All-Star teams. He was never really considered a future Hall of Famer. He never finished higher than 9th in the MVP voting, never hit 30 home runs, and only led the league once in an offensive category, slugging percentage in 1984. But there's something to be said for longevity. Baines retired with 384 home runs and 2,866 hits, just 134 shy of 3,000. Still, his 38.8 WAR is equal to players like Paul O'Neill and Maglio Ordonez. For Baines, I was happy for him, but still confused and upset for players like Don Mattingly, Andrew Jones, Heath Hernandez, and an array of others who I feel are far more deserving. For Harold Baines, I would have a hard time voting for him when I have to put 10 other names, because on a normal ballot, he'd be one of my last choices. But 22-year career, nearly 3,000 hits, 6 All-Star teams, a Silver Slugger, and Harold Baines is 34th all-time in RBIs, more than Chipper Jones, George Brett, and even Mike Schmidt. So I have absolutely no problem with him being in the Hall of Fame. Therefore, I have to say, although this one is very close, very borderline, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt for this long and amazing career, even though there are several other absolute snubs who I would put in before Baines. Nevertheless, I think Baines is barely deserving. So there you have 10 Hall of Famers whose inclusion in the Hall of Fame has been questioned.
Foremost, this year all of a sudden miraculously, he came up with 12 votes? What? Since when? He finished in the top 10 MVP ballot once in his career.
If you enjoyed this video, let me know more names who you think are undeserving and I can make a follow-up video with my own thoughts. But also let me know what you think of the 10 players I talked about. Where do you agree and disagree? Again, these are all official Hall of Famers and nothing can take that away from them, especially some random fan like myself talking on the internet. But I thought since we're always talking about snubs, that we should also talk about some Hall of Famers who maybe really didn't deserve to get in. It's not a perfect system, because if it were, Andrew Jones would be in. And so would Barry Bonds. But I digress. Let me know your thoughts down below. Hit that thumbs up. Hit the subscribe. And we'll talk to you next time.